afternoon, and welcome to another edition of On Point for today, the 31st day of January 2025. Of course, this is the final day in the first month of the year, and some may ask, where has the time gone? But time is moving along, and of course, we are at the end of January. Many persons would have made their resolutions at the start of January, so I'm hoping that whatever resolutions, whatever plans, and whatever commitments you would have made to adhere to throughout this year, I am hoping that they are working out for you, because the time is moving on. And so I say welcome to one and all. Of course, it is always a pleasure coming here. My name is Alexis Jeffers, and it is my duty, so to speak, to come here on a Friday afternoon. So once I'm here to impart whatever information I would have brought with me, and also to update you on various things that are happening here on the island of Nevis. So good afternoon to the folks who are listening here on Nevis, St. James, St. Thomas Parish, St. Paul, St. John's, St. George. All of the 5 parishes here on Nevis are tuned into Von Radio 860 AM, and of course on the FM band 93.7. But of course we do have a huge following down there in St. Kitts, or Sister Island, and I want to say welcome to you, of course, throughout the sub-region, thinking about St. Martin, French and Dutch St. Martin, that is, Staber, Statia, St. John's, St. Thomas, St. Croix, the whole of the Virgin Islands, including the British Virgin Islands as well, and of course up in the United States, from the East Coast all the way across to the West Coast. We do have a huge, contingent, or I would say a huge set of nationals who are there. I was looking for another word, but anyway, or citizens are there who are either studying there, working there, living there, and or visiting, whatever the case might be, up in Europe, Canada, all over. You see, when I get into identifying each country or each island, for example, I know I'll run myself into problems, but some persons want their country or island to be recognized, because of course they are listening to Von Radio and they want to be acknowledged accordingly. And sometimes we come here and we forget to mention those south of us, meaning Antigua and Dominica, the whole of the Windward Islands, all the way down to Guyana. We do have quite a number of those nationals living among us. So I want to acknowledge those folks as well who are here living and working, but also shouting up those down in those countries who have a connection to us here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and more so the island of Nevis. So I spent some time with that, but it is important, because in this day and age we have persons who are connected by way of radio, by way of internet, Facebook and the likes, and all of the different social media platforms out there. So it is important to acknowledge persons, because without the listenership, without persons tuning in to listen, not only to this show, On Point, but also to Von Radio, it will not be the same. And that is how you develop yourself as a person and as an institution, when you have a huge following, because each one tell the other, and that's how the word is spread. Yeah. Okay. So at the start of the show, normally we would acknowledge those who are in the bereaved column. I just want to express my profound and deepest sympathies to all those who are bereaved at this time. Of course, later today or this afternoon, we'll see the funeral service for Mrs. Sheila Daniel. She would have passed away a couple of weeks ago. And of course, I want to express my sympathies, since I'm getting to do so first time around publicly, to the entire Daniel family. And of course, all of us who are old enough, or those who would want to know, Sheila was the wife of our first Premier, the Honorable Simeon Daniel, who would have passed away, I believe, back in 2012. But be that as it may, Sheila would have passed away, and she would have lived a long, fruitful life. A lady of class, dignity, and a lady who was symbolic of what we stand for here on the island of Nevis. She carried herself well, was involved in the church, and had a certain deportment about her that was one to emulate. And so she would have done her tour of duty. She would have lived, like I say, among us. And I believe, from what I can recall, last time, or from when I first got to know her, apart from being the wife of Dr. Simeon Daniel, she worked at the Philatelic Bureau. I believe that's where I knew her back in the day. And then, of course, she would have spent time doing church work and the likes, because she was the one who played the organ over there at the St. Thomas Anglican Church. And she was a devoted Anglican person, Anglican member. And indeed, I would have gone to church many a times with her. So I want to express my sympathies once again to the entire family, including Adrian. All of us would know Adrian, who would have done some legal work here on the island of Nevis. He's a lawyer by training and works down there at the firm Daniel Brantley and Associates. And indeed, all of the family members connected to Mrs. Daniel, I say, accept my sympathies. And indeed, funeral service, like I said, is later this afternoon, somewhere around 1:30, the viewing, and indeed at 2 o'clock would be the service over there at the St. Thomas Anglican Church. So if you can make it, please go on out and give the family your support. I will attend myself, all being well, shortly. Also, of course, over a week ago, we would have gotten the news that our dear friend, colleague, and community member, Mr. Fitzroy Warner, would have passed away. Of course, those of us who know or knew Fitzroy Warner know that he was around and serving in many capacities. Of course, first of all, let's look at the challenges that he would have had. He was one of our dialysis patients, and of course, he was one who used his experiences to challenge others to look out and after themselves. And indeed, he would have gotten recognition for his effort and the education that he would have passed on. And indeed, he had a few years of challenges, yes, but at times you would hardly tell, because Fitzroy was always a vocal member of the community in every area. At least I would say he was a jack of all trade. I will not finish that particular phrase, because to say otherwise, he was a jack of all trade, and he told you exactly what it was like in every sphere and in every field, whether it was in the field of construction, mechanic, heavy equipment operation, in the political landscape, healthcare, you name it. He can give you advice in anything there is or there was. However, he would have had his challenges, and he would have departed this life, and he was a friend of mine, of course. We had many battles, good and bad. And of course, in the area of politics, he was one who I would have, had counsel with on many occasions. He was one of those who considered himself a major strategist when it comes to politics. So you can't take that from him. So he would be missed in that regard, because when it comes to an opinion, he was very opinionated, I must say, and he held his own in any conversation, and I want to say argument as well, because in most cases some of those conversations will descend into an argument, and that is what he relishes. He would have relished back in the day, because he loved that, like the animation. And of course, Nevis will certainly miss such an important figure. I'm not so sure when the funeral will be held for him as yet, but it will be sometime in February, I understand. So in time to come, those announcements will be made, and of course I'm asking all who would have known him and who would have been there alongside him, or had some back and to and fro with him, still come out, and let's go out and support the family and support those who are left behind. Of course, he would have left behind I think 3 children, 2 of them who are here on the island of Nevis, Collier, and also Kevon. And of course Tasha, was his wife, so she's still there. Of course, I want to express my sympathies to his mom, who is down there in Anguilla. He had sister, brothers, and I think he had another son down there in Anguilla as well too, yes. Can't recall his name. But there is a large contingent down there in Anguilla who would also recall Fitzroy from his days and his exploits there in Anguilla, because he did spend most of his youthful life there in Anguilla, where he would have learned quite a few things that he would have brought back here to Nevis and, applied them in business, so to speak. So, Fitzroy would have lived his life, and many of us may say otherwise and say certain things, but he would have lived his life as he see fit, or he saw fit. And of course, when a man has lived his life, what can you say other than to say, may his soul rest in eternal peace. So we look out on and listen up for when that announcement is made to show our support. In terms of the brighter side of life, in terms of birthdays, I don't have a list with me, but of course, so as persons depart this life, persons are born. So there must be some persons who are celebrating today, either a birthday, an anniversary, a wedding anniversary that is, an anniversary of some sort, whether it's on a job, whether it's in some other place, or whatever the case might be. There is some celebration taking place today. And I've always said this, that when you're celebrated, celebrate as if it's the last time you're going to celebrate. But celebrate and ask God's protection and guidance into many more years of celebration. But as you're celebrating as well, whatever you have in terms of finances, spend some on yourself. Not saying to spend all, but spend as much as you can, so that when it's all said and done, you would tell yourself, I had a wonderful day of celebration. And have a fun time today. And years to come, I expect you to continue to ask God's blessings for many more years of life here on earth, and occasions to celebrate as well. In terms of the weather, I understand up north in the United States it's very cold up there, and I know many of you who are listening to me now. I'm down here in the warmth of the Caribbean weather, that is, and the Nevis weather. And if you are cold in the United States or in Europe somewhere, come on down to Nevis. Come on down to the Federation to spend some time. Get some warmth in your body so that you can go back and actually, feel a bit warm when you get back there. Even though it's cold, you will enjoy your time there a little bit more after you've had some fun and frolic here in the Caribbean and get some heat in your body, of course. I'm saying all that to say that this is the tourist season. And this is the time to come to Nevis, to get away from the cold, get away from the honky-tonk life, as they say sometimes, whatever. We have all kind of expressions that we use. But come on down to Nevis and have a wonderful time down there. It is really beautiful here on the island of Nevis. The weather is good. People are ready to welcome you. And of course, we always have a very nice and very beautiful Nevisian welcome waiting for you right here on the island of Nevis. So it's very easy to get here for now, easy enough, I would say. Miami into St. Kitts, and then you're on to Nevis, or Miami or some other part of Europe into St. Martin, then into Nevis. Of course, we are hoping to eliminate all of that bottleneck and all of those travels in the near future, whereby you can leave Miami and come to Nevis. We'll talk about that, as we have done last week, about the work we plan to do up there at the Van Summer International Airport. But we are setting the stage, and as it is right now, and this year, we're saying, make your way to Nevis, because you have many different places you can visit here on Nevis. The food is good to start with, because down there at Penny's, you have some bars down there that are serving wonderful meals. Over in the St. James area, Oahu, you have on the rocks up at the Westbury, you have dewdrops. All over Nevis, you go. You have up there by the airport, you have what it's called now, drift. And they're spread all around the island, up in the hills, Bananas, wherever it is. Luna, all of those restaurants are available to you when you come here. You don't have to cook when you come to Nevis, because food is available plenty, and various cuisines are available to you. And indeed, outside of the food, of course, you have entertainment on the beach, entertainment around Nevis. You have the Nelson Museum you can visit, the Hamilton Museum down there at the Bath Stream, which was just renovated. Beautiful scenery. You got on whatever ailment you have, you can go there and have a nice little soak, as they say, or spend some time in that warm bath. And of course, you can go for a hike up to the top of Nevis Peak, or any of those off the beaten path type of hikes, especially on those ATVs. So a lot of activities around here. Do your research and come on down to Nevis. I'm doing this little promotion, because I want to see people come in here between now and when they claim that the tourist season is done. But I believe we have a season going throughout. It is not as robust later on in the year as it is around this time, because this is the time we expect to peak. February, March, that is. Okay, so come on down. Nevis is open for business. Come on and have a wonderful time here on Nevis. Okay, moving right along, and okay, we'll look at a few things this afternoon. Indeed, yesterday, not yesterday, what am I saying? On Tuesday, the Premier would have held his press conference, and indeed, during that press conference, he would have covered a number of areas, all of the areas, I must say, that are under his watch in terms of the Nevis Island administration, that he is the one who spearheads or leads the government that is in power, that is the Concerned Citizens Movement. All of the ministries and departments, you'll say, fall under his watch, if not directly, indirectly, because they are ministers, of course, who oversee the day-to-day operations of these ministries and departments, along with the other persons who fall under the ministers. That being said, one of the revelations yesterday, one of the issues that was raised, was the Rest Haven. I said yesterday, but I'm talking about Tuesday. Was the Rest Haven property down there that has been a major discussion here on the island of Nevis. And the discussion have been along the lines that apparently some persons on the other side seem to think that there was something that was withheld from the public, and it is CCM to blame for whatever has transpired down there, which I will say from the get-go that the people of Nevis have a price tag to pay on 2 acres of lands down there at Rest Haven. 2 acres of lands for $30 million. Of course, the Premier would have articulated and ventilated that issue and gave a chronologic history as to what has taken place down there. Indeed, as the Minister of Lands, which I was fortunate to be appointed as such in 2013, I knew of that particular acquisition that was done back in 2007. And of course, the NRP, when they were in government, when they did the acquisition, never came clean to the people of Nevis or to the public on a whole. Of course, we would have made some information available, but in their way and characteristics, their characteristics, would suggest that everything that is said, they'll never want to take responsibility for anything, but rather to find a way to spin like a top in a mud, or whether it's spin like a spin bowl, or whatever the case might be. But when all is said and done, when all of the spinning is done, no Riri, no Rara, no spinning. The facts was presented by Premier Brantley on Tuesday. And I don't have the clip with me, but I suppose I can direct you to his Facebook page and you'll get the full context of what he said. But what I'm pleased about is that he spent some time and laid it out clearly as to what transpired from 2007, when the acquisition was initiated by the NRP, all the way down to when the assessment board was put in place to come up with a final price on those lands. He spoke about the valuations that were done. One was done by, I believe he mentioned the name Macefield Nisbet, who is one of the owners, one of the persons involved, his family, I must say, and that was $5.6 million US. Of course, another valuation was done somewhere around 2007 as well. 2008, which was done by Mr. Hastings Daniel, now deceased, God bless his soul, for $3 million. And it did mention, that's the premier that is, indicated that it didn't specify whether it was EC or US. Even if you say US, 3 million US dollars or 3 million EC, whatever the case might be, I don't know. But of course, there was another valuation that was done by Douglas Surveying. I believe that was a Mr. Steele Douglas, if I can recall, when I saw that particular valuation then. That was 5.3 million US dollars, right? Okay, and fast forward, like I said, the entire clip with all of the explanation is on that particular, on the Premier's Facebook page, which I would suggest that persons should have a listen and get the truth as it is. Because sometimes, like I said, when you hear things being said, a lot is being left out from the other side, because that is their MO, so to speak. Yeah, they have this culture where it's all about deception, it's all about lies and deceit. But on this end, on this side of the aisle, on the CCM side, we come to you with the facts. So the agreed price then by the Board of Assessment that was done back in 2013, that is just after we got into government. So all this was there, waited for us. But as the Premier rightfully said, government is continuous, so this process continued. But it started in 2007, and the final price, like I said, was given at was assessed at $6.3 million, the exact amount that is on the clip that you would listen to. And of course, what was most important, he did mention that the 6% interest that any acquisition, and you fail to pay at the appropriate time or when the acquisition is made, if you pay 10 years later, you'll be paying interest for 10 years. Every day, that amount accrues interest. So 6% interest was retroactively added to the final total that was given by the Premier in his budget address and also during the press conference on Tuesday. It's 30 million. That is after all sort of court hearings, High Court, Court of Appeal, Privy Council. It was finally settled at $30 million that is owed for 2 acres of land down there at Rest Haven and some old buildings. That is the work of the NRP. You see, the reason why I bring up this land issue, because NRP is always touching the issue of lands. And it's one party I always say shouldn't be touching issues when it comes to lands, is the NRP. And I've said before, even their leader, I am saying to her, before you open your mouth, before you go public with anything, and perhaps that is why you don't say much, because you don't know the history of your party, you don't know the history of your party in government, and you don't know about the history of those you are dealing with. And because of that, every time you open your mouth, it's pure foolishness you're uttering. Janice, my advice to you is go and equip yourself, inform yourself, arm yourself with the history of your party, the history of your party in government, and the history of yourself in politics. And then you'll understand that sometimes you have to leave certain things alone, right? Because when you look at this $30 million for 2 acres of land, and many times the NRP opened them out, including that same leader who talk about the acquisition we made up there at Herbert Beach. You remember we spoke about that in the past, and I'll repeat it again. Compare what we have done with the acquisition up there at Herbert Beach. 13.9 acres of lands were acquired for 2.4 million US dollars. Well, put it in EC, just over 6 million EC dollars. We put our Board of Assessment in place. We put a 3-member panel together. We had the valuations done. We did that, and in a short period of time, we were able to get that dispensed of. Mark you, let me be clear, we haven't paid off for the lands as yet. We have started paying, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what the balance is, but payments are being made. But this thing has been outstanding since 2007 by the NRP. By the time they left government, they didn't touch it in terms of paying the people for their lands. But as soon as we were able to acquire those lands up at Herbert Beach, 13.9 acres of lands, we did what was necessary under the law. The last thing that we had to do was to pay, and we are paying. But this is you know, the way the NRP is, because I can tell you more, you know. 14 pieces of lands were acquired by the NRP while they were in government. They acquired lands all up and down Nevis. And what was consistent about all 14 pieces, they never paid a soul for one piece of those lands. People have died and haven't gotten paid for their lands. People died, cried for their lands. They had their lands there to pass on to their dependents, children, whomever, family members, but the NRP didn't care about that. They went over to Coon, for example, and acquired some lands over there where that housing development is, Coon Housing Development. They acquired the lands, transferred the lands to the NIA, got title in the NIA's name or in the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation's name, and they started building. But the people were not paid for their lands. When we got into government, I was approached, and whereas they could have paid perhaps $400,000 back in 2008, thereabout, when the acquisition was made, we had to end up paying, I believe, one of the owners well over I believe it's about 1.5 million EC dollars when the lands were assessed and valued. But you know what the person said? Listen, you all had my land for this amount of years, and I'm talking almost 10 years. People are now living on the land. People are now receiving the benefit, enjoying the benefits of my lands or their lands. So we had to sit down, negotiate, and come up with a payment over $1.5 million for those lands. So it is consistent with the NRP. Take people lands and don't pay. Whereas on our end now, the only piece of land, the government that I was proud to be a part of, and still a proud member of the CCM party, the only lands that we would have acquired here on the island of Nevis while I was there was those lands up at Herbert Beach. And you know why we did it? There's a land mogul who was here, already owned 600 plus acres of land at the base of the mountain going across all the way up to Hog Valley, from up here at the top of Dressups. Bought all the lands in and around her property over there at Libert Hill. So she wanted more. And I said, no, you can't get any more. When the people of Nevis, the people of St. James, have a sentimental attachment to those lands. That's where we go to for recreation. Persons go down there from St. James, from Nevis, visitors go down there to jump into the ocean to enjoy a bath. There's an attachment, and of course, there's more to come about those lands, but we'll leave that, because those lands will be fully utilized just now. But the bottom line is, for the historical attachment and the fact that this person wanted more, I went to the cabinet of the Nevis Island administration then and said, those lands must be in the hands of Nevisians, and we'll pay the people for their lands. We'll do it right. And we did so. But I got all kind of castigation about those lands. Yeah? We have a function up there from time to time. Every year, I must say, and other people use the land. And they're going to say it was acquired just for that. No, no. That is Nevis people's lands. And it was a worthwhile acquisition, because when you look at the amount of lands and what we paid for it compared to down there at Pinnies, 2 acres of lands for $30 million, and you go over to Herbert Beach, 13.9 acres of lands for just over $6 million. What do you have to say to yourself, Nevisians? You look at that and you ask yourself the questions. What do you have to say about that? What I'll say further is that we like to buy people's lands, you know. We don't like to take people's land as a government. We bought lands up and down Nevis as a government. Just recently, the Premier would have made the announcement that we have paid 3.6 million EC dollars for 36 acres of land up there at Garners. And those of you who don't know where Garners is, it is next to University Heights. If you still don't know where University Heights is, take a drive. When you get to the pottery, the Newcastle pottery, just drive up that road, head up past VOJ, and keep driving like you're going up to the mountain. And you'll get up to University Heights. Just across from University Heights, that is where the 36 acres of lands are. beautiful scenery. When I was there as the Minister of Lands, I saw the documents pertaining to those lands and the persons who previously owned it. When I looked at the will that was left behind, it contained something that was alarming to me. It was stated that if I were to, I'm not going to call any name, but the person who executed that will said that if I were to pass, then the son would get the land, of course. But if the son predeceased her, then of course the land goes to Vassar College in New York. How do people understand what I'm saying? If the mother died before the son get the land, which of course is what happened in 2018. But if the son had passed before the mother, then the land go to Vassar College in New York. Those of you in New York who know of that old college in New York, I don't know if that's the ladies' alma mater, but when I saw that, I said, how could Nevis people land end up in a college and in New York? You're crazy. So I went to the cabinet of the Nevis Island administration and I said, guys, we need to get our hands on these lands and put them in the land stock of the NIA, of the government and the people of Nevis, so that our young men and young women, just like how they got houses over there at, the University Heights, let us buy these lands and then we subdivide it and sell it out to our young people so that they can be in some of the most prestigious places here on the island of Nevis. Beautiful view up there. That's how you think as a representative, and that's how you think as a government. And that's why I'm proud of that execution. When the Premier made the announcement, I said, voila, love that. Thank you, Premier Brantley and your team, for making sure that we were able to find the funds to pay for those lands. So you hear them talk about money here, money there. Nah, listen, money tight. But at least that purchase is one that will go down as a major purchase by the NIA, government, CCM in government, for the people of Nevis to replenish the land stock and to make sure we have prime land for our people. Not only that, of course, we went down to Uwali and bought that property where the pier is, the Uwali water taxi facility. Wonderful investment. Buy it. We didn't acquire nothing. Buy it. Yeah? That cost us about 3-point-something million EC dollars, sorry. And then, of course, we went back and bought 9.04 acres of lands in the surrounding there for parking and what's not. Lands going up into the hills over there from the Harwoods over there. We didn't acquire it. We went and negotiate and bought for just about $1.9 million. You hear all the buying we have done? Whereas, when you go to Uwali, right, and you stand in front of the gate there by the Uwali water taxi facility, and those lands right in front of you there on the mountainside of the road, those used to belong to the government and people of Nevis. Yeah, that same hillside there used to belong to the government and people of Nevis. In 2007, 2008, they about NRP sell out that land. I think it was for $7 a square foot. In Jones Estate, lands are being sold for $30 US a square foot. Almost $80, over $80 a EC a square foot. But NRP sell out the land there, right there in front of the water taxi facility. When you look at that hillside, when you go there, watch it. And when you look at it and tell yourself that went for mostly $7 a square foot to one of their own, whoever they sell it to. I don't got a name to call. But the bottom line is, that is what they have done. Sell out our prime property to their own, instead of making sure that the persons who really need those lands, or better yet, in Jones Estate, you have lands over there, hold on to it. Right on the island's main road. Hold on to it. That's a prime piece of real estate. But you're glad to go and acquire 2 acres of land with some old buildings down there. For $30 million we got to pay out, fork out that. Yeah? Not only that, we bought lands up in Hamilton, housing development up there, over in Craddock Road, the top of Craddock Road, we bought those, didn't acquire. Over in Rice's, we bought, didn't acquire. Every piece of land that we would have put into our land stock here on Nevis, during the time I was there as the Minister of Lands, we bought those lands, except that piece of land up there at Herbert Beach, which we acquired, and we had no other, way out or no other options but to acquire it because it was a point in time when we figured we had to make that move, and that's done. And I leave it as that. But speaking of land some more, because like I said, when it comes to lands, the NRP need to watch them out. Because when they don't sell out land, they want to take the people's land just like that without paying for it. Over there in Catesby, the CFBC fellow who are always up and down making a lot of noise. You won't believe he was occupying lands over there, 2 pieces of lands. Everybody around him buying, you know, because his neighbor bought, other people bought. You see what's over there, some buildings out there unfinished, all of them bought. But he feel that Nevis people land belongs to him, so he shouldn't buy. Oh, really? Down here where you have this business place there, I told the gentleman there, organize yourself. Get a lease on your property, which he did. Restaurant over there, sold the land. All up and down over there, people have their lease, people have their lands that they've bought. Even though I'm not too happy with some of the prices of those lands over there, that is not for me to debate at this point in time. But what I'll say is that everyone had some tenure in terms of some ownership, whether by way of purchase or whether by lease. But this particular gentleman, CFBC fellow they call him, believed that he is mightier than thou, went over there, have government land in his possession, and say he's going to apply for first title of ownership to those lands when the government already owned the land. Then I see a clip surface somewhere on Facebook. Listen, I was down in the cabinet down in St. Kitts one Monday morning when this thing surfaced. Man bawling snot, crying, say we take away his land. The whole of the Federation was up in arms and in hysteria over this piece of land, of these pieces of lands. When in truth and in fact, I told him, listen, the truth will always surface, yeah? You all could listen to them foolishness there, the truth will come to light. Well, the truth did come to light. Truth did come to light that the man didn't own the land, but what he wanted to do is to take the government land by hook or by crook, as they normally do in their life, by hook or by crook, take what is not theirs, instead of going to buy. Like I say, everybody around him was buying. Everyone over there was buying or leasing. But he believed. So when you look at what has happened here, right, with this 2 acres of land down there at Rest Haven, consistent with them, very consistent. They sell out what is there because up. I remember, you know, my mind just went on to something else here. I remember back in the day when those 400 acres of lands were sold to Newfound to bring a development, a hotel development, which I thought was coming, and all of the ingredients were there, but, you know, didn't happen. But they made a song and dance, say we're selling out land for X amount. Listen, the rule of thumb, when you're selling large acreage of lands, large acreage, especially 400 acres of land, the larger the acreage, the smaller the cost or the price per square foot. So whatever it is, they worked it out. It was 21.5 million US dollars. For ease, let me say $58 million easy. And you know who collected all the money there after they make all the noise in opposition? NRP collect every red cent. $58 million. And you know the next thing? The mortgage that was taken out in Trinidad with UTC, the Unit Trust Corporation, NRP refused to pay the people for those lands. Well, let me say, pay the mortgage that was taken out to purchase those lands down there at Pennies. So they collected the $58 million, and instead of paying Trinidad, they refused to pay. That is how they are. Tell Janice, get hold of the history of the party, because if you know the history of that same NRP, you would never want to be the leader. As a matter of fact, you'll run away from NRP right now because it's pure madness you're dealing with that party. So they refused to pay. Who came back in to pay? CCM had to come back in to find money. I know we're still paying $21,500 there about per month. US dollars I'm talking to, $21,000 per month we have to find to pay Trinidad. People right now in Nevis who bought lands down there at Nugent Heights that were connected to that mortgage still ain't get a title. And by the time we came back into government, the whole of Nugent Heights and Nugent Village, except about 5 parcels of lands, were all sold out. NRP collected about $12 million for those sale of lands. So on top of the $58 million for the 400 acres, add on the $12 million that they would have collected for all those prime lands that were sold out down there in Nugent Heights and Nugent Village. So on the issue of lands, what happened at West Haven is not a surprise, because NRP wasn't buying anything to put back into the land stock, which we are doing and which we have done. But all they seem to do is to take up and sell and take away from poor people and don't pay them. That is how they operate. Acquire poor people's land, and if you think they did that when they were in government, then give them another chance and you hear trouble in Nevis. Because I have a love for history, eh? And history has taught me that history repeats itself. And just as they were, so they'll be and worse. But anyway, I'm not worried about that, because the people of Nevis ain't going to go back to what they have discarded. Because I would tell you, getting off the issue of lands for a bit, I will tell you plain and simple that I believe the NRP, they're enemies to the people of Nevis, yeah? Because everything you hear from the NRP is pure negativity. Everything that is bad, that they perceive to be bad, that they think is bad, they go out there, and that is all they're putting out to the wider world. I wouldn't say to the Nevision public, but to the wider world. The way it is these days, you know, Facebook, YouTube, X, Twitter, whatever they call it, all of those things, instantly. Whatever is shown to be bad in Nevis is picked up throughout the world. I already said that sometimes when you're out there calling on Nevis, say water is off, electricity is off, when it ain't true. People pick up that, and potential investors out there sitting and listening, and they say, what? That what going on down in Nevis? That is what is happening down in Nevis? Well, why would I go down there to invest my money? Well, I want to say to those who are listening that whatever you see coming from the NRP, don't even believe it. Don't even study them. Take what we are saying to you, that Nevis is open for business. Those are the enemies, and we are the friends of Nevis. Let's put it that way. Because the NRP has shown that they are the enemy of the people of Nevis. They're the enemies to the island of Nevis. They're enemies to themselves, because I'll tell you what, when they had this impasse during the last election, 2022, it clearly shows that they're enemies towards one another. They couldn't come to a decision. They had so much fight. People come from St. Kitts to Part fight, all out in Brick Hill in house over there, all down in Hanley's Road, all up in wherever they went for these secret meetings with people from all kind of different institutions down in St. Kitts come to Part fight. Enemies they are. But there is a saying that 2 or 3 or enemies will come together against a common foe. You know who is the common foe? CCM. You know who is their common foe as well too? Mark Brantley. So enemies will come together, because I see some of them over there jumping up and hugging up one another on Facebook now, when in truth and in fact they know they don't like one another. They know they hate one another, but they'll do all that simply because of what they're looking for? Power. That's all there is to it. So I will say to the people of Nevis, you know, do not let the enemy control your mind. Do not let the enemy control your mind, because once the enemy get control of your mind, they'll get control of your thought, they'll get control of your thinking, they'll get control of everything. Control your mind against the enemy. NRP is the enemy to the people of Nevis and the island of Nevis, because you cannot love Nevis when you're going to go out there and say all the negativity that you're saying out there. That doesn't make any sense to me. But they believe negativity sells. But negativity can be disastrous in many ways, because if you seek to destroy Nevis, what do you do in the end? You destroy this pristine and beautiful island, and then what do you do in the end? You think you're going to get it rebuilt? No. If you start to say these things and then come back and say, throw water upon that, just like you did with the 80 acres, since we're talking about lands, you say all manner of evil about the late Malcolm Gishard. Say all kind of things, make up all kind of stories. And then when it's all said and done, Oh, they may put up some billboard as well down in Jessup all around the island. Just like they're putting up some foolish billboard these days. But anyway, put that aside. But the bottom line is, I said all manner of evil about Malcolm Gishard and saying these lands, about these 80 acres, 80 acres, 80 acres. They even told people on the flights them coming down that we're going to split up the 80 acres and all of you going to get a piece. All of you going to get a piece. People come down and they vote and destroy the man. A good man. Destroyed him. And then when it was all said and done, you know what them NRP people say? That don't do your work. Show what up on that. That don't do your work. So, oh really? Alright. So that's how you all intend to go and destroy Nevis, destroy the people of Nevis, be destructive in every way just to taste power or to get into government. And then all of a sudden what? Flick a switch. And everything is hunky-dory. Yeah? Well, the people of Nevis won't have none of that though, you know. So, I believe the people of Nevis are going to be wise. And keep your head on, people of Nevis, because a lot of it are the things that are being shown out there. A lot of things that are being said. Listen, Nevis is bigger and better than that. So it's up to you. I know for sure it's one man they can't get through to me. So I leave it as that. So, do not let your minds become the devil's workshop, yeah? By some of these foolishness. Speaking of one other thing, let's go on. Because it's just about an hour we have. It's been here for about 45 minutes. So let's move on. Water. I did touch water last time when I was here. Briefly, because I was on my way out at that point in time. And I said I'll pick it up again. But let me say, on this matter of water, let me commend the Cabinet of the Nevis Island Administration, the Premier of Nevis and his team, along with the Minister directly responsible, the Honorable Spencer Brand and his team. Because I will tell you about water in this place, right? We'll touch electricity too, you know. Because these are the things that when we came into government, the amount of things you heard on the radio every night, we hear about bead. Water, 1 million gallons of water. And I want to say to the people of Nevis here and now, when we came into government, there was a deficit in water in Nevis. We now have a surplus capacity in Nevis. But there was a deficit. And why I say that? When we were told that we were getting 1 million gallons of water per day, we were never getting that from those pumps that BEAD would have installed. They did 2 pumps, one up at Madden's, giving us just about roughly 350 gallons of water per day. And then over at Fottergills, another 350 there, about just over 600,000 gallons of water per day. We never had the storage capacity. As a matter of fact, when we came back into government, there were some metal tanks or whatever tanks they were, but there were some fuse panel tanks. And all of them were leaking. More water was coming out than what was going in. So we had to solve all those issues. So what we did, we went about spending $30 million to upgrade the distribution network, new tanks and everything. But before I get to that, I said it, yes, but let me backtrack a little bit. So if you can recall, I've brought this to you before and I'm going to say it again because people must be reminded. You hear about the $30 million down there at Rest Haven? $30 million we owed. Well, we paid over $30 million for our water for a company to pump water to our tanks, and we paid for it. Never before in the history of Nevis was any company engaged to come here to pump water out of our wells into tanks and collect a paycheck for that, and collect a contract, or through a contract collecting a paycheck for that, or any payment for that. Let me be slow about these things, eh? The NRP engaged BEAD to develop 3 wells. They developed 2, and we were paying them in excess of $55,000 a month to extract water from beneath our surface here and pump it into the tanks that we own. All of that, the infrastructure is the government own it, you know, the government and people of Nevis. So all they do were pumping water out. And I'm going to say something quickly before I forget. Up in Fottergills, I remember that pump went down. The pump went offline, you know, stopped working. You think BEAD had a pump to replace it? No. We had to call St. Kitts and get a pump from St. Kitts to put down in the well at Fottergills, and still was paying them. I don't come here to talk nothing that is not true, you know. So we were paying, our pump was down there pumping, you know, and we still paying. I mean, I tell you, a contract we was bound to for 10 years. We end up spending over $30 million on that contract, when in truth and in fact, they were the ones in NRP who told us that those 3 wells would cost the people of Nevis $6.4 million thereabout. It was about 2-point-something million US for the 3 wells. And we end up paying over $30 million, including paying for the electricity for those pumps. We eat all of that. You could imagine that. $30 million, millions of dollars under the NRP, and they keep harping on what? We bring in a company here from Trinidad to drill some well, 9 wells? Well, I will say to you, 2 of them are successful thus far. And the Nevis Water Department is already making the connection over the Madens to pump the water into our tanks over there, or the tank that is over there, the big back tank up there in the hills. So we have gone about it the way that Nevis people would be proud of us, because that's how it has always been done. But NRP came in, and I don't even know, we get one big huff with the NRP. And what the people understand what huff be, you know, you pay draft, and then all of a sudden your opponent say, huff you, take up all of you, they just call them what, chips or whatever they are, those things where you push on the draft board. Then you, all of a sudden you hear, I huff you. One big huff we get with that deal there with Bede. And a lot of things we get a huff down there as well, down there with the what you call it, the West Haven property down there. All those persons who got lands acquired by the government and never got paid, you got one big huff by the NRP. Huffing the people of Nevis. And that's why I call them the enemy to the people of Nevis, and I'm going to call them out for who they are. Call them out for who they are, because they come up and they're talking as if like they've never been in government. But they spent 6.5 years in government. When they couldn't huff you with your land, not they couldn't, they did huff you with your land. They huff you with water. They huff you with electricity, because there were people in this island here who owed $200 up in Stony Grove, down in Hanley's Road, over in Butlers, and you had to catch bus come down, pay $5 come down to pay your $200 before they cut you off. But there were some of their supporters over in Gingerland, down in town, all over the place, owed $80,000 for electricity, $25,000 for electricity, $41,000 for electricity. The radio station that was down there huffing the people of Nevis every day. At the radio station that was not my choice, nobody in Nevis' choice it was, apart from Hubaka and Happy anyway, had owed, oh my goodness, how much was it, boy? $56,000 for electricity, if I can recall. The records might be there, I might be able to pull it up. $56,000 for electricity. So the poor man out there who owed $200 had to run come town, move with alacrity to come to town, because if you don't come in time, they don't call you, tell you if you don't come, they're cutting off. But yet still, those who are closely aligned to NRP, 41,000 over there in Jones Estate, 25,000 down on Main Street, 80,000 up Government Road, all over Nevis, some big money. But once you were aligned to the NRP, you're good. But the poor man had to run come town in the heat of the sun, however they could, from Stony Grove and elsewhere, to pay the $200, or else brap your electricity gone. That is how we were huffed by the NRP. We received one big huff from them. And that wasn't all, you know. They huff us with the electoral process too, you know, because they take off 200 plus name. One big huff. People born and raised here. People who walk the street of Charlestown. People who said hello to them every day. People who live where they live. People who know that they're properly registered. And happy say, you're not going to get to vote. One big huff you get. Boy, I tell you. Janice. I'm going to get to you one of these days, Janice. But I'm going to tell you this much. You can write as much as you want on Facebook, right? People want to hear from you, because your party is calling out. Your party, and more particularly in the person of, what's her name, Pat Bartlett, calling out our young people, so they go in and Google to find out how to treat people and how to deal with people up there in the hospital. Out of place. Imagine that. So, I ain't gonna spend the time on Pat, because I don't had my days with Pat, in the sense that I was her boss as the Minister of Agriculture. And I can't understand for the life of me how Pat didn't want to work then. And Pat now coming back to people say, employ him at 65 to go back to work. Where, Pat? Where, Pat? You didn't want to do the work then. Well, why would you want to do work now? At the age of 65 when you were in your... Before then, you were in your glory days, so to speak. First woman vet. Never got a thing out of Pat, but poor Pat. But Pat now is coming back and cussing young people. I believe Pat has cussing of people in this place here too. Just leave Pat at the foot of the cross here, because I am telling you this. Me don't get me word, Eric gets some too. And I say Eric, that's the minister, Eric Evelyn, because he was permanent secretary then. And all our we get our what? Talking locally and colloquially. But when you're going to go and drop word and say negative thing and disparaging things about our young people, young doctors, young teachers, young lawyers, whether in construction field or whatever, and you're going to knock everybody, even those in public works, you're really out of place, and you're really only presenting to the public one face. But in truth and in fact, you're not what you're presenting, because like I always say, when a person tell you who they are, take them at their word. But when they show you who they are, and Pat is showing us who she is, you better believe her. They have no love for you young people. None whatsoever. They would say what they want now, just to appease and see if they, by some miraculous means, people would say, well, you go into government. But I would tell you, I can't understand how someone who didn't want to work in government now want to come back to say they want to work. I talk about Pat, I talk about all of them who don't like to work, but now want to come to say they want to work. And didn't want to carry out the government's policy, but now they want to come to make policy. I tell you, what a world we live in. They didn't want to do that then when they had the opportunity, but now they claim to have it. But I want to say to the NRP as I wrap up here, if I was the NRP, I would go to the Lord in prayer and ask the Lord for forgiveness. And when you're done, ask the Lord for forgiveness, come to the people and ask the people of Nevis to forgive you for the wrong that you have done. And if you don't want to do that, just sit down and read this scripture every time, this passage of scripture. I believe it is John chapter 1 and verse 8 and 9. Yeah? It goes something like this, and I hope I get it right. If we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. But if we confess our sins, God is faithful and just and will forgive us of our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And happy, repeat that to yourself, all of you, Janice, all of you, repeat that to yourself every single day. And when you're done, go to the Lord in prayer and ask the Lord for forgiveness for what you have done to the people of Nevis. And then after you have done that with the Lord and you have made it right with the Lord, come to the people, publicly apologize and say sorry for the wrong that I've done. And once you have said sorry, go and hide yourself after that, please. Because the people of Nevis is not going to return to what they have once put down in a corner somewhere and tell I stay where I be. Because basically, it's the same old you're getting from NRP. Cussing, denigration, all kind of negativity, and spewing all kind of language out there. You hear some language on radio? I beg you all don't listen to me, because if you have a clean heart and clean mind, you don't want to listen to them kind of language and then profanity I hear coming from the other station, right? If you love that, well, be my guest, you go ahead and do that, yeah? But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I believe time is up for me today, and it's a wonderful Friday here on Nevis. Like I said, I'll go on to pay my last respects to Mrs. Sheila Daniel over there at the St. Thomas's Anglican Church, and I'll say to you that in wrapping up, I was thinking there was something I had to speak about something else here, but I won't touch it because time is running at this point, so I'll leave that for another time. That is these packages of concession that the Premier would have alluded to and articulated on Tuesday when he gave his press conference. We'll leave that for another time, but I just felt like I wanted to touch on land and water and some of the things that we have to deal with as an administration, and the things that we'll have to correct as we go on. And listen, we're not looking for excuses here as a government. We know that we have to deal with these things because government is continuous, and it is like a relay. A baton is passed on, We're not dropping this button. We're running with it, and we're dealing with the circumstances that we have to deal with. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my quota for today. I want to say to those who go to church on a Saturday, go and serve your God tomorrow. Those who go on a Sunday, do likewise. Go on Sunday. Pray for this island and pray that we'll continue to prosper as a nation. May God continue to bless all of us, and may God continue to bless the island of Nevis and the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. May you have a wonderful weekend, and may God continue to bless us all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.
With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.